What's up, good people, and welcome back for episode 2 of AEW All Access. Our review here at Big Old Belt Media. Jamal and I are ready to talk about this episode. Give you our thoughts, full-blown spoilers, as you will see this review recap, whatever you want to call it, after the episode airs. But we got a chance to check this episode out early as well. And after our watch of the first episode, which was the premiere, we had a lot of questions and thoughts. So we were very adamant to make sure that we came back for episode 2 to kind of see how would things play out, because I was very much on the fence with episode 1. I spoke to a lot of folks who had checked out episode 1. Seems like everybody had mixed reactions to it, but episode 2 was going to be completely defining for us. So Jamal, handing it off to you right away here. Episode 2, titled Main Event, as this one focuses on Sammy Guevara's match with Bryan Danielson and his wife and their career, and then Britt Baker as she prepares for a match with Saraya, and the Young Bucks continue their comeback, which also has a little bit of Thunder Rosa in this as well too. Ultimately, what was your thoughts about this episode?
Again, like the first episode, there was a lot that I liked, a lot that I was kind of perplexed about. I think I was writing down my notes as the episode came to an end. I'm very convinced this is a full-blown marketing campaign to get over Sammy Guevara, because it's I think part of the fun of the episode of the first 2 episodes and hopefully the continuation of the series is remembering the history from the other side of the lens. They're giving you a peek backstage. Yes, there was a scene where they said that, hey, AEW told us not to roll sound during this moment, so we didn't. But why would they leave that in the final cut? Why was it important to let them know that, like, hey, So that was one of those moments where I was perplexed about. But remembering the history as it was, and how our perspective as fans about it, is kind of like comparing those 2 stories, because I remember that promo that Saraya cut. I remember thinking it was, this is not good.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see backstage that people went, "Oh yeah, this is all the way bad."
Yeah.
And then of course, Sammy doing damage control himself, stemming from incidents and stuff like that. His perception with fans, the cancerous nature that the fans have labeled him as to be, and him hearing those fans and going and hearing enough of that voice and going, okay, this is a bit too much. I need to. I'm going to have to deal with this in a different way. Yeah, there were some interesting things about it. There are some interesting things, about the first episode that continue to lapse over. And you know what? We're not going to talk about the Elite, so let's not bring it up.
Yeah. 2 things. And again, as we seen we got a chance to check the episode out early. You mentioned that, did it make it for them to leave that into the final cut? Sometimes it's hard for us to determine if it is a final cut or not. There's some indications if we're getting an early screener that doesn't actually make the cut to television. But with that being said, if that is a specific part that you said does make it to final cut, definitely really? But okay, no problem. I'm not going to nitpick. I'm going to say that episode 2 definitely got more into groove. I definitely enjoyed this episode a lot more. I feel like this episode, as I have to wear different hats. I know people had comments last week about the uncasual fan versus the et cetera, et cetera. Listen, I am a fan of wrestling. I'm a fan of AEW. I'm also a critic. We're both critics. We're both fans of this. But also, when you do these reality shows, it's also about allowing other folks to be a part of the experience or to become a fan. After we get 2 hours of wrestling, a third hour to be isolated from everybody else in your household of not knowing what's going on. And that's typically what these reality shows are. You may not know about why this person was a good basketball player, why this person was a famous rapper, et cetera, et cetera. But because of what they're inviting you into, you want to invest without there being additional question marks that you will not find answers to, because I can promise you no uncasual fan is going to go dig deep into Twitter in terms of what is that drama and beef about. They're not going to go look for it. You probably won't find it. Nonetheless, this was a very more complete episode, as you mentioned, the Sammy Guevara and Tay Melo, his wife, being the forefront of this episode. It was interesting to see this in full circle. as the wrestling fan, we knew the drama. We had our opinions about it. We have a podcast each week. You can check that out there. But to kind of see this from behind the curtains and see him and Eddie kind of squash their beef that really wasn't a beef. It was I didn't like what you did. You didn't like what I did. Don't let it happen again. Suspension. Hey, let's be professionals. Get back to work. It's hard to call that a beef because once they exchanged their words, that was it. But let the internet tells it they were hunting for each other's heads out there, but whatever. It was good to see that and shall I say more in transparency. And then also Tay also feeling the effects of the women's division about quickly being overlooked and how to continue to keep yourself relevant and the different things you have to do and how really uneasy it is to pitch your ideas. Who's willing to listen? Where do you find motivation and encouragement when no one wants to even accept or like I said, listen to your ideas? So seeing that was interesting. Thunder Rosa coming on this was definitely the part of the episode or the series I was looking forward to after episode 1. We got to see Thunder Rosa about where she's from and what she does and her side of the injury. She didn't address the drama or the beef. She just kind of kept it like, hey, people thought I wasn't really injured. That hurts that they thought that. Meanwhile, I'm on Busted Open Radio each and every week, doing what I can do. On to the next thing. Not much of the Bucks. They basically just said, hey, we're coming back. We're nervous. Yeah. We're coming back. So to give it back to you really quick, this episode was more complete because there was nothing left with complete holes of, we're going to mention this, but we're not actually going to talk about it. Everything was addressed. Sammy and Eddie's issue, they quickly brought it up. Why? They showed you the footage. Why? And so on. Saraya and Britt Baker, in terms of the building of that match, we got to see both of their sides in terms of the reservation, but yet how monumental this match it was going to be for them. So seeing how they had to work through that and for them both to be able to be on the same page for that. A little bit of Wardlow, but not really, but Wardlow and Britt Baker and their bestie friendship that some people rumored to have been there. I had heard nothing about that. Either did I know they went back as far as, I never knew that, but I guess
they came up in the Pittsburgh, area from IWC together.
Yeah, I never knew that.
Yeah, Britt used to be Wardlow's manager, and she actually left, the Indies before Wardlow did, and it was a thing. So, but that's what I'm saying. Like, this episode had a lot of those little things.
Yeah.
That if you delve deep enough down the rabbit hole, or if you were fortunate enough to be at the moment, at the place, in the time that you needed to be, you understood what you were saying. It's not necessarily an Easter egg, but if you know, you know.
Yeah.
But then if you don't know, there was a very quick line or two explainer that allowed you to go, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that people were shipping Wardlow and Britt Baker.
Yeah,
cool. And then for other people, it's like,
much like my
they've been been a thing.
Yeah.
If you watch the Indies in Eastern Ohio and Western Pennsylvania, there was one other thing you mentioned, Rosa. Quickly, the thing I was interested in that was like going back in the history. The thing that we wondered the most on the podcast was, well, where the hell is she? There was the thing that they said last week. Okay, well, when is she coming back to work? And then we see, well, she's having these issues that haven't really been super explained until now. 2 herniated disc with different tears in the disc, and then treating like like contusions in the spine and stuff like that. Oh, okay. So, if that's on the show now, I wish they would have done that over the course of her time away in the moment. And that's kind of the good thing about the show. Like, you can't change the history. It is what it is.
Yeah.
But it does kind of bring up things that you forgot about. You go, damn, why didn't they have Rosa cut this promo the way that she did on the show? Explaining what it is. Explaining that the internet only knows 1/10 of 1/10 of 1/3 of what they're talking about. And that's still wrong.
Yeah.
I'm not paying Sirius XM to listen to her every Thursday.
Yeah.
But what you can do is bring her out, have a sit-down interview with Jim Ross or whoever, or Renee, or whatever the case is, and say, listen, this is what it is. This is what we're going to do. It just seemed directionless at the time, and now that they've cleared it up, the history kind of feels a lot better. It just, in the moment, I was kind of like, oof, what are they doing?
you're not wrong about how you feel. Nothing about Thunder being on Busted Open was the solution to her absence.
Not at all.
That's how she makes her extra money. She has a job to do, and they surely ain't paying them to talk about her injury day in and day out. But you're entirely right, and it goes back to the philosophy. And I think if you read between the lines here, for anybody, whether you're a hardcore fan or not, the women struggle in pro wrestling.
Yep.
Every single aspect of it is a major deal to almost a limited, impossible possibility to a limited optional choice that they kind of make. I mean, Saraya and Britt Baker is probably the biggest storyline that they had at the time, and yet the two of them still felt like they were the underdogs for it. They were like, man, we have to knock this out, otherwise all of this fails. And I can truly imagine that no one else feels that type of pressure like they did. And then you got Tay, who's basically like, man, I've been killing it, but because the internet doesn't like me and the fans don't like me, I don't have anything to do. I guess I got to support my husband in order to be somewhat relevant right now. And then lastly, as you mentioned here, you got Thunder, who was your champion. That was a quick tidbit. She was the champion. She had to drop the title.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like, oh, she's gone. And the promo that you all saw, that whether you're a fan or not, that promo that you saw was it. She got to get on there and say, I'm hurt. I got to relinquish the belt. That's it.
But that came after several months of her being absent. The interim thing, Tony Storm going, saying the interim this and interim that, paper champion this and whatever, and how it was holding up business. And then they finally do the thing that everybody needed him to do in the first place. And then, at the pay-per-view, they're going to do something else. I just wish there was a little bit more of that in the forefront. But now we're talking about hindsight. One thing that you did mention, and I think that was kind of a theme of the show, is how much tougher the women have in general. Now, if you watch the product, or if it is what it is. That's something that we talked about ad nauseum on the podcast. But it's not the same struggle for everyone, because Tay Conti was talking about how important it is. Closed mouths don't get fed, basically, and that's a thing that we've heard from people backstage at AEW over and over again since jump.
Yeah, no television, no microphones, just straight up.
Right. Your closed mouths don't get fed. So her, ability, for her coming from a sports background where it's a meritocracy, you go in there, do the work, and you win. Well, how do you politic yourself? Not in the bad way, but how do you politic yourself? How do you market yourself, I guess would be a better word, to the people that you need to do in order to go forward? A question that I get asked often about wrestling is, if it's fake, how do you win? And that's kind of the thing that we're seeing Conti in this maturation process, as she's learning how to win the game of wrestling.
Yeah, the
championships or whatever, but to win the game of wrestling means to get your merchandise license, to get your name, trademarked, to be able to, competently market yourself in front of the camera and backstage. And that's how you get ahead. That's how you break through that glass ceiling to the next level.
Yeah.
And, yes, being a male helps. Yes, being a white male helps. Being blonde is a plus. But in general, she, for all the things that we see her as, beautiful Brazilian woman and all that, she still has issues selling herself to the company that hired her, which I think is very telling and should not go understated.
Yeah. The last thing I'm just going to say too is, this episode, as I make my comparison back to Rose to the Top, this felt more like the episode of Rose to the Top. We got to see people both in the wrestling setting, and we got to see them more in the personal setting with all of them. But yeah, this is absolutely a PR campaign to increase the likeliness of folks who seem to have PR hits throughout last year, throughout 2022. So Britt Baker, Sammy Guevara, even Eddie Kingston for a mild time. I mean, that's what this show is. And lastly, the last thing I just want to say is, this episode had a lot to do with Sammy Guevara and his wife. Sammy getting that big match with Bryan Danielson, the 2 out of 3 falls. Which Sammy was very emotional about it. And who could blame him? He wrestled the best in the world. His boss said that, like, you did so good the week before, we want you to do 2 out of 3 falls. Is the first time he's ever done a 2 out of 3 falls. And as he mentioned, fast food Sammy could never imagine that he would be in this position, and to kind of see him be emotional and really sit back and evaluate his life, hopefully is a really big step in the maturity of him, because he's definitely done some knucklehead stuff. That's not my opinion. That's his fact that he said. So to kind of see the hard work pay off for him again, and he's definitely having an imposter syndrome, like he doesn't belong, and his wife sits there and helps motivate him even through her own struggle. So hats off to them. This absolutely is a plus for them as a couple that's frequently booed. When you see behind the scenes, they're going through it. And by the way, another tidbit, they did a 80-90 mile drive with their cats in the car to get to the show. That just lets you know too, like they're still on the road full time, and that's a lot of driving to get to the job that I do. They're not being flown out, and even though they got a job and they get in the check, they still got to make towns and whatnot. So,
well, like that particular segment is more of the road to the top type of a thing.
Yeah.
I do believe that yes, it is 80% Hard Knocks. 10% Total Divas / road to the top, and another 10% where I haven't really figured out yet. Let me ask you this before we go.
Yeah.
We've seen who the players are, and they have these 4 concurrent storylines going on.
Yeah.
No, we didn't really see anything from Adam Cole this week. But then again, there's not really going to be much to tell until he comes back, which just happened like a couple weeks ago. So that is what it is. We know that he's out. He's going to come back, and that's the thing. But who haven't we seen so far and thinking about the time period that we've set him, who haven't we seen that you would like to see?
Ricky Starks, man, and I believe if this is when Wardlow was starting to get hot, if I'm not mistaken, Ricky Starks should be of interest right now, or Powerhouse Hobbs. And I'm not saying injury related. I'm just talking about who were the fans truly behind at this time, or who were doing stuff of interest. And I know we're getting close to Full Gear. Next week episode is titled Full Gear. So if I remember correctly, those were the wrestlers outside of the main wrestlers, the face. And obviously we're not going to get Punk here, but like, I believe that, they were of relevance. So I would like to have seen them. And honestly, I would like to see somebody that name is nowhere near my mind right now, because I want to get to know some of these other wrestlers and their challenges. I mean, we could talk about Top Flight. They've been getting beat left and right, and still to this day. I would love to know how a tag team who have been unable to be a tag team due to injury, how they continue to stay relevant. What was the work they were doing in the back? And I think that's worth at least a segment in All Access, and I think the fans would appreciate it. So, we'll see if they pop anybody else out there for us. But next week we got episode 3, Full Gear, which is going to focus on the Bucks' return, Britt Baker and Saraya, and Sammy Guevara and the Fatal 4-Way that he's preparing for against 3 living legends, as they say, and Tay is being left out of the party. So more adversity. Seems like a part 2 more of episode 2. Anything else you want to add, sir?
Yeah, just in general, like the episode, definitely like the direction that it's going. And I really, really hope that we get to see. I'm glad that they're starting small, and that there's only 3 or 4 concurrent storylines with their top 10 biggest talents.
Yeah.
I would like to see more, and I would like to see more of the technical aspect of it, where like what is Tony looking for when he says that a segment's good or whatever. And we do see a little bit of that, him being the technical director, or the director of the show, actually. No, we're good on time. We'll run this commercial, cue this pyro, go have fun out there, whatever. But I would just want to see a little bit more of what makes the machine run in AEW, because there's a lot of little things that have to happen in order to get the product that we're going to see tonight. At 8 o'clock. So good show so far. I'm still sports entertained.
Yeah. All right, folks, we're back next week for episode 3. That episode is titled Full Gear. We'll be here for your review and recap after Dynamite goes off the air. Well, after Dynamite goes off the air, you check out All Access, and then you can check this out. But anyway, get in the comments, let us know your thoughts about episode 2, folks, and we'll see you back next week. Thank you so much for watching.